In the Gun, episode 131 of your new favorite WVU football podcast here. It's time to talk some portal updates, some coaching changes, some around campus, a little headlines style edition of ITG here, if you will. I am Wesley Euler, got the best teammates in the business, got the signal caller Jed Drenning with me here, our dear signal caller Owen Schmidt. Listen, he is Santa's little helper. I mean, he is in busy season, UPS, right? It's Christmas time. We're about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks away from Christmas as we record this episode today. So Big O's got some stuff going on. I think he had to take a coworker to Med Express or something. They had a little injury. He's got it all going on. So we'll catch up with Big O here in a couple days later on in the week when we will do a WVU season in review episode. But for today, you got myself. You got Jed. I think our buddy Schuyler is going to hop in for the final segment as well, too, maybe when we talk some WVU portal updates. But this episode of ITG, as always, brought to you in part by our friends at BetOnline, where the game starts. And Jed, we have got plenty to get to, like I said, some portal updates, some coaching changes, some All-American honors, a whole bunch of stuff to hit on here in this edition of ITG. But we start with a little around campus shout-out. I think two of our Mountaineer programs deserve just a quick moment of our time here. The first being the men's soccer program, making it to the Final Four, the College Cup, as they call it in collegiate soccer. But for all intents and purposes, for the common vernacular, they made it to the Final Four of the of men's college soccer. They played Clemson, and unfortunately, in the national semifinal, they did lose 1-0. Tough game. One of those games, Clemson scored early in the first half, and that's just, Jed, I know you're not a soccer savant. I'm not a soccer savant either, but I think I have an okay understanding of the sport. That's just how it works sometimes. Team comes out, they jump on you, they score 1-0, and then they're kind of just able to suffocate you the rest of the way. And WVU, couple chances there, but just not the night that they had against or not the night they wanted to have, I should say, against a talented Clemson team who was, like I said, able to get that advantage early and protect that lead the rest of the way. But certainly a historic season, first time ever in program history that they've gone to the College Cup. Big shout out to Dan Stratford. He talked about taking this program to new heights and winning national championships when he took the job, and just got as close as anyone's ever been in program history.
As you touched on, Wes, I know less than zero about soccer, but in listening to the comments of the opposing coach, it was pretty apparent that he recognized they got away with one, right? So yeah, I'm not so sure that the better team won just based on that. If I can apply any context to those comments, and then there was a tweet that was making its rounds, and I thought it was very telling. It was Ren Baker embracing, Coach Stratford embracing each individual player as they made their way off the field after suffering that tough loss. And I've seen it up close and personal. Let me tell you something, guys. Ren is a servant leader. There's no doubt about it. Like, Wes, I don't know if I told you guys this, but I remember after the Baylor game, we were on one of the five buses heading from the stadium to the airport. And as we made our way up on the tarmac, and we were actually waiting on Zach to get loaded on the plane because they had to make special accommodations for what was going on with Zach. So we were on the bus is a little longer than normal. And we get the box meal when we leave the stadium, much like you do with the Steelers. Everybody has the box meal. So a lot of trash ends up piling up throughout these buses, right? Well, Ren is in the front seat of the bus, and he ends up picking up the big trash can and making his way down the aisle, harvesting the trash, filling the trash can. Our athletic director is collecting the trash on bus five. I'm thinking that's your servant leader. So
Gotta
when
love
I
it.
see a
Gotta love
tweet
it.
with Ren embracing some heartbroken athletes and coaches, I am not even slightly surprised. He's the real deal. Is what you see is what you get. He's absolutely the real McCoy. And hats off to Ren Baker and hats off to the men's soccer team for that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a lot of fun watching those guys go on their run to the Final Four, to the College Cup. 63 years as a program, farthest we've ever been, first time into the Final Four. Let's have this be a building block, right? To when we look back in another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, and we're hoisting a national championship trophy, saying, that all got going in 2023. Great job by all those guys to, again, like I said, take the program somewhere it's never been. But let's make this a starting point and not the final destination. Certainly, Jed, you mentioned Ren Baker there. Transition here. Ren Baker, first coach that he hired as athletic director of WVU was, of course, Mark Kellogg, women's basketball head coach. And while one team in men's soccer is having the a historic season come to an end, man, a really good start to the season for the WVU women's basketball team and Mark Kellogg here in a new regime. 9-0, Jed, including beating Penn State for the first time in years, an 18-point win over a ranked Penn State team. They are 9-0, the WVU women's basketball team. Not ranked this week, though. Although I got to think, that's one of those things. You know how coaches are. I'm sure Coach Kellogg, he probably doesn't hate that because he could still, hey, you guys are 9-0, but no one's still believing in you. You're not getting ranked. Nose to the grindstone. Keep working. Keep proving people wrong. But we just wanted to, again, take a moment and shout out Ladies Hoops for a very strong start to the season.
And it's a 9-0, as you touched on, with some big wins that you mentioned, but also some wins, and they are absolutely taking some folks behind the woodshed. So I don't know how you would assign any kind of scorecard through 9 games of a new hire, but
Right.
whatever that scorecard might look like, at least through 9 games. Now let's see what it looks like through 19, 29, and 109. But through 9 games, wow. That is an impressive A+. They've taken care of business. It's obvious those girls are having fun playing together. He's made things exciting. So far, so good. Incredible job by Coach Kellogg and his staff. Incredible job by those girls. Now let's keep it cranking. As you know, Big 12 play is going to be right around the corner. Let's see how things shake out once they get into league play.
No, absolutely. It's exciting. Great start. Keep it rolling. Let's look up and be ranked here in another week or two. And yeah, like you mentioned, not only some big wins, but also, I mean, just some demoralizing victories in there as well too. Hitting triple digits with 107 points the other day against Delaware State. Could be a fun winter on the hardwood for the ladies basketball team and for Coach Kellogg. We'll be keeping an eye on them the entire way. Another thank you to our friends at Toothman Ford for presenting this episode of Into the Gun. Big shout out to our guy JR. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. Make sure you're supporting those who support us, who support our student athletes. Toothman Ford does both. And big thank you to JR and Toothman Ford for all they do for us here on this podcast, for our WVU student athletes in NIL, and for the cheapest vehicles, cars costing less in Grafton there. Jed, a piece of news that I think a lot of us anticipated hearing at some point, but now it is official. Drake May to kind of spin the block back to football here. Drake May, of course, the talented signal caller for the North Carolina Tar Heels, a young man who has a chance, hey, potentially to be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, but certainly a top 5, top 10 pick. He, to no one's surprise, but again, now it's official, will not be playing in the bowl game. He will, forego the opportunity to play in the final game for UNC as he will get ready and start the process of preparing for the draft, preparing for the combine, preparing for his pro days. So again, like I said, a piece of news that we all anticipated would happen, but now official. Drake May will not be under center for the Tar Heels.
He won't be the only North Carolina Tar Heel not participating in this bowl game. I mean, there's going to be a list on both sides, and we'll talk about that as the game approaches. But uh, West, time flies, and it doesn't seem that long ago that Drake May was coming out as a much heralded, highly regarded 4-star. Um, and it looked for the longest time like he was going to end up playing for Nick Saban. So it was a bit of a coup when he stayed closer to home and ended up playing for the homestanding Tar Heels. And a lot of people feel that, all right, this is the best kid the program's ever had. He's a record setter. I think he has just about every club in his bag. And, a year ago, it almost felt somewhat blasphemous to suggest something short of Caleb Williams as the outright unanimous number 1 overall pick. But I'll tell you what, this conversation has turned now, again, not as much because of the indictments against Caleb Williams and how things didn't shake out down the stretch for USC, but Drake May has really gained some fans in NFL front offices. And people regard him as an absolute bona fide, legit stud. A
Yeah.
lot of people have said if these two were in last year's draft, they're easily the top 2 quarterbacks taken. And it's to the point I would almost go as far as to say if he doesn't sneak in there and unseat Caleb Williams at the number one overall spot, I would be very surprised if he's not taking number two overall. So he's going to be playing a lot of football for a lot of years to come, and he has been nothing short of impressive. Now, what does that mean for West Virginia? Again, we'll dive into that later. They have a dual threat backup that was a highly regarded recruit in his own right that'll play in his stead. But Drake May's been fun to watch. I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
every time I've been around a TV with North Carolina playing, he's what you walk away from most impressed by. I mean, he makes all the throws, he extends plays, he has a moxie to him. Just a salty football player that's fun to watch, and I think he has a very bright pro career ahead of him.
Completely agree. I will obviously get a much closer look at him in February when I'm in Indianapolis at the Combine there, and I know he'll be one of the big names along with Caleb Williams, and it'll be a big quarterback class draft once again. Michael Penix, a bunch of big names going to be in there. The Heisman Trophy winner Jalen Daniels, we'll talk about him here in just a minute as well too. But yeah, I'm with you. I
There you
think
did it.
Drake May.
You did it. Did you say
What I do?
Jalen?
Oh, I did.
All year, people have been doing that.
I'm
It's easy to
stuck.
do, right?
Yeah,
We're Big 12 folks. Of course, it's
Jaden
Jalen.
and
Yeah,
Jalen, those
yeah.
sons of guns. Yeah, those
Here's my
talented
question, Wes.
quarterbacks.
Is there a conference in the country other than Big 12 aficionados like ourselves that make the same mistake, or is it because of our allegiance to the Big 12 that we slip into the Jalen Daniels instead of Jaden Daniels? I don't know.
It's probably because we're a Big 12 show, a Big 12 program. I don't think
I agree.
I don't think SEC podcasts
I don't
are
think
are
so.
doing Freudian slips with the Kansas quarterback.
No, I promise you, Pac-12 aren't because he played there. So
That's true. That's a
anyway,
good point. Eric Ford was at Arizona State before he was LSU. But yes, Drake May. I'm with everything that Jed said. I think he's the real deal as well. He'll be off the board quick on night one of the NFL draft. I mean, all these teams at the top of the draft. The Bears, okay, maybe they're going to stick with Justin Fields now after what we've seen the last couple of weeks and seeing down the stretch here. But you've got New England picking high in the draft; they're going to need a quarterback. You got Arizona picking high in the draft. Who knows what happens with Kyler Murray? I mean, there's going to be some real teams in that top three, that top five that need quarterbacks. And it will be once we get to the end of college football season, once we get past the Super Bowl and we get into combine and draft season as it relates to the NFL calendar. I'm telling you folks right now, you're going to hear Caleb Williams versus Drake May at nauseum. That's going to be debated for months, and it's going to be a lot of fun whenever we do get there.
you know what's interesting, Wes? The conversation, I didn't expect the gap to close until the timeline you're talking about. In other words, I thought that once the offseason kicked in and they started heading to the combine in Indy and they started having pro days, that's when I thought you'd start to hear the conversation of the gap closing between those two. I'm a little surprised that the gap is closed as soon as it has. Does that surprise you?
Um, yes. I mean, if you would have told me before the season, I would have said absolutely because, like you said, it was almost a like you were almost if you would have said that anybody other than Caleb Williams was the unquestioned guy, it was almost like an insult to your football intelligence coming into this
Yeah.
season, right? But when you see how this year played out for USC, and to be fair, I think Caleb Williams still did a good job. I don't think he was the reason that their season bottomed out or anything like that. But there's been some other stuff with him too. Some of the rumors about is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Does he want to maybe toe that line and try and influence where he ends up getting drafted? The reports that he was going to ask for equity in the team of whatever drafted him. I think there's some things now that have played into that as well. Whereas Drake May, he's got the other side that NFL teams and front offices and talent evaluators just gush over, right? He's got the family bloodlines. I mean, he's got a dad who was a professional athlete, a mom who was a professional athlete, a brother who was a professional athlete, and I think that's one of those things that, again, I know scouts and coaches and talent evaluators, they always drool over those bloodlines.
Good point.
So yeah, I always thought Drake May would be in the conversation as a top 5 pick, as the number 2 quarterback. But yeah, I did not think we'd be here already where, I mean, I'm sure if you look at some big boards, people have him as number 1 over Caleb Williams at this point.
Yeah, and it's a growing number. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the preponderance of GMs,
Sure,
but
sure.
it's more than that short handful than I thought it would be at this point.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm telling you,
Absolutely.
he's gained a lot of purchase and a lot of traction. I mean, people have been very impressed with him down the stretch, and it almost felt as though, and we're way out in the weeds with this now, but it almost felt as though the Caleb Williams piece was almost like a Trevor Lawrence vibe to it. In other words, a generational type. Once every 10 years, this kind of kid comes along. He
Sure.
felt that way, and I'm not saying he doesn't. What I'm saying is typically when someone feels like that, you don't have a 1A encroaching closely behind that here comes Drake
Right.
May, and
Right.
that it kind of has that vibe to it.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And like I said, it's going to be a lot of fun when we get to February, March, April, the combine, the pro days, all those different things here in the back and forth over, to be fair, two very talented signal callers who, both have a chance to carve out great NFL careers for themselves. What does Drake May being out now mean for the Mountaineers, mean for the Tar Heels, mean for the Mayo Bowl? Well, you're just going to have to tune in a couple weeks when we bring you our WVU UNC preview right here on ITG. But speaking of high profile quarterbacks, Jed, we had two hit the portal. Dillon Gabriel, of course, we're familiar with him in this parish. Went from UCF to Oklahoma, was the starter for the Sooners last year, helped them get that thing turned around in Brent Venables' second year at the helm. Well, Dillon Gabriel hitting the portal and announcing he is going to go to Oregon. So he will go from one high flying offense to another. He'll go out to the Pac-12, following Bo Nix's footsteps there, and be the next Ducks signal caller in his final year of eligibility. And then Riley Leonard, the talented Duke quarterback, he is following, I guess, the Sam Hartman path of an ACC, a Tobacco Road signal caller, maybe at a more historic basketball program, going to play out the rest of his eligibility under Touchdown Jesus there in the Golden Domers in South Bend for Notre Dame. Either of those, I mean, I guess Riley Leonard, not as surprising. Dillon Gabriel, I mean, I think some people were surprised by that. I think some people expected him to follow Lebby to Mississippi State, but I'm drawing a blank on the young kid's name now. But do you think this is just as simple as Oklahoma saying to Dillon, "Hey, we have this young five-star recruit, Jackson Arnold. Yes, we have Jackson Arnold. It's his time. It's this era. We can't make him wait around. We're going to kind of turn the page as we go into the SEC. And thank you for your service." Is it that simple with Dillon Gabriel, where it's an amicable split by both sides, even though they just had a pretty successful season?
I think it's a factor. In my estimation, there's a lot of moving parts. In other words, let's start with this. Never does the portal feel more free agency like than
Sure.
when these types of things happen with these marquee quarterbacks at these blue blood programs. So a couple things have played out. Again, this is just me from the outside looking in. When I see Dillon Gabriel, the security blanket that surrounded Dillon Gabriel at Oklahoma was the Jeff Lebby system that he knew and he loved and he played in all the way back to his days at UCF. Now, to ask a quarterback to lose that play caller, to lose that OC, and stick around and not encounter more than a hiccup or two, that's a big ask. So I have to think that factored in. But at the same time, here's the NFL piece of this maybe impacting Oklahoma. Could Oklahoma have put together a package enticing enough to retain Dillon Gabriel? I have to believe that for all the resources Oklahoma has access to, yes, they could. But at the expense of what else? They
Hmm.
already have Jackson Arnold tied in as a kid that they are incredibly high on and believe he has a tremendously bright future. So, do you want to mortgage the farm and give up who knows what else at other positions from an NIL standpoint? And maybe if you sign Dillon Gabriel to the type of deal it would have taken to keep him there, you lose three, four, five other
Sure.
kids.
Sure.
I don't know the answer to that. But so Dillon Gabriel loses his OC. It makes perfect sense for me for him to step out in the open market and says, "Hey, let's truly see what my name, my image, and my likeness demand after all the things I've done now at two stops, including a blue blood like Oklahoma." And when you look at the situation in Oregon, he will now be stepping in for a guy in Bo Nix, a former transfer himself, who, by the way, set a career record for most starts by a quarterback in college football. And guess who's going to be poised, knock on wood, hope the kid stays healthy to do it, to break that record?
Yep.
Dillon Gabriel.
Yep.
So is Dan Lanning ahead of the curve in the sense that
Just give me
he
all the give me all the
understands the
give me
plug
all
and
the
play
20.
nature?
Give me all the 24-year-old
Yes.
quarterbacks and let's roll.
Yes. So I'm going to build my roster in such a way as a guy with a defensive pedigree that I'm going to have a lot of playthings and a lot of toys on the offensive side of the ball to
Yeah.
make it a very enticing and inviting ecosystem for a 23, 24-year-old quarterback who wants to step in here as a very established commodity. In the course of one off season, he'll step right into the locker room. He'll lead these men. Is this the new normal for Oregon? I mean,
It's
maybe
not
you
a
can
bad
pull that
blueprint.
off. I mean, it's kind of a rental. I mean, he's there for 1 year and he's done. But there's
It's a
worse
pretty good
things
rental.
than getting Dylan Gabriel for one
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But as you touched on the Riley Leonard thing, I don't know if I'm as surprised, or for that matter, I don't know if I'm as sold on Riley Leonard as I am Dylan Gabriel. But this is truly, to me, the free agent nature of this new age,
No doubt.
unlike any other situation you're going to encounter. It's a very quarterback centric and quarterback driven sport. It remains that. So if you can get a highly established and fortified, battle tested signal caller like these two, especially like Dylan Gabriel, think of what that means to your program at large. I don't expect them to encounter much more than a couple hiccups as they make their way out of the Pac-12 into the Big Ten with this newer, tougher schedule. So good for Dan Lanning. I mean, it seems like he's trying to figure it out with Phil Knight's money, right? Phil Knight's willing to, finance this type of thing. Now we'll never know the true numbers. I mean, the agents are going to inflate it to be 2 or 3 times what it actually is,
Sure.
because that's what
Sure.
the agents do. So we'll never know the true numbers that it took to make this happen. But it's fascinating to me. But get ready for more of this. I mean, I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see when you have Oklahoma losing its starting quarterback. I mean, that truly speaks to the brand new nature of the modern college game, which we always call college football 2.0. College football 1.0 is dead and gone. That's over. This is 2.0. Now, can Jackson Arnold pick up where Dylan Gabriel left off and what's going to be, to some extent, a new system? We'll see. But I didn't on any level expect him to follow Jeff Levy to
No,
Mississippi. I didn't
I
really
didn't either.
expect that. I thought that was wow. You talk about
He's got
backing up
bigger
the Brinks truck.
he's got bigger fish to fry than, all respect to the good folks there in Starkville. He's got bigger fish to fry than Mississippi
That
State.
would have taken a heck of an NIL package, I would imagine. But so that's what's intriguing here. And Wes, we're gonna close this portion and just talking about some of these big name quarterbacks we mentioned. Well, you already mentioned Jaden Daniels. Some people are
Mm-hmm.
upset. I want your thoughts on this. Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's a Michael Penix year because at least he had the signature moments plus the numbers. Now, he wasn't flawless for the balance of 13 games, but I just think that, to me, if there's a Heisman winner this year, it probably should have been Michael Penix. But I've thought before, Wes, maybe there shouldn't be a Heisman winner every year. Maybe there should be a threshold or a criteria. Make it like the electoral votes to get to the White House. If you don't get 270, you don't get there. So make it some sort of minimum votes. If you don't hit the qualifier, then that means nobody's dominant enough or good enough or historical enough to be included in this long list of the greatest players in the history of the game. Some years you have one, some years you don't. I'd be fine with that too. And this might, in fact, be one of those years that we fall short of the mark and you don't have a Heisman winner. I'm fine with that too. But if you want to go for bold thoughts and bold statements, that's my bold thought, my bold statement. Jaden Daniels, I understand the complaints about compiling numbers against lesser competition, and he really had no signature moments. He got his doors blown off by Florida State. He lost Alabama. You don't think of a signature moment. I mean, throwing 6 touchdowns against an FCS team in November is not a signature moment.
Correct.
Michael Penix at least had that, but still, either way, I don't know if that's something that should be meted out every year. You vote on it every year. And if there's enough votes to say, hey, that guy is of the caliber we're looking for in the great history of this award, then you hand it out. Otherwise, maybe you don't. Thoughts?
Interesting. I don't hate that idea, but I would have thought I would think there's some more recent years that would have been better examples of that than this year, because I did think that this year's candidates were viable, if that makes sense. Um, but I don't hate that I mean, you're doing like the baseball Hall of Fame thing where like someone doesn't have to get in
Right.
every single year, right? You get,
Yes.
if you make the threshold, you do. If not, you don't. Like,
True.
I don't hate that idea in general. But I'm with you. Like, listen, I don't. on a scale of 1 to 10, my outrage here that it was Jaden, not Jalen Daniels, Jaden Daniels, the LSU signal caller, is like a 4. I would have voted for Michael Penix. I think it should have been Michael Penix. I understand the definition of the award is most outstanding player, right? That's it. Most outstanding player. And I think Jaden Daniels probably was the most outstanding player. But this is a lot like the college football playoff conversation. Like it's never been the most outstanding player, right? It's been the most outstanding player on the most outstanding team. That's how this has always been done for the
Yeah.
for the Heisman Trophy. And Michael Penix, man, 13-0, bunch of those moments. It's always been about those Heisman moments like you've talked about. And in those 13 games, 7 of them were against ranked opponents. He was 7-0 against ranked teams. What was LSU's record against ranked teams? I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's not 7-0. They went 9-3 this
Put me over
year.
the top, Wes. Well, put me over the top because I remember late in the season, I was even thinking we might have had a conversation with Bill Steele about it. And I was like, look, I'm kind of fine if it's Jaden Daniels, right? But I think the exclamation point that Michael Penix put on his resume with the Pac-12 championship and a second win head-to-head against Bo Nix in Oregon, that's enough for me.
Same
I
here.
mean, up until that point, I would have more readily entertained the Jaden Daniels conversation. But after he did that and won the Pac-12 for them, that's enough. Come on, right?
I agree. And that's what it's always been about in the past. It's always been about those moments. And even, some people were drawing the Robert Griffin Jr. parallel. Well, Baylor went 9-3 and he won the Heisman.
10-3, yeah.
Yeah. Or 10-3 if you include the bowl win, right? Yeah.
That's
But
right.
I think 9-3 regular season.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. 2 things. One, Baylor going 9-3 was a lot different than LSU going 9-3. Baylor going 9-3 back then was the best season in the best season in program history. And
Absolutely.
2, Robert Griffin had the Heisman moment when he threw the game-winning touchdown against Oklahoma. Again, I'm not outraged. I'm not screaming into the void about this. I think Jaden Daniels is a worthy winner. I think, again, just by the term most outstanding, I think you could very easily argue he was the most outstanding player in college football. He was certainly the most valuable to his team. I think that for sure. But as I think you and I are on the same page, so often this award in the history of our lifetimes has been about moments. Not only the most outstanding player, but the most outstanding player on the most outstanding teams in the most outstanding moments on the biggest stage. And man, Michael Penix had a couple of those, and I don't think Jaden Daniels had any. But that's all.
I'd say this, Wes.
I'm not outraged about it.
If Brian Kelly, I put it on him. Look, it's your fault that you're LSU and you lack a feature back. If you have a true feature back, a true bell cow like LSU should, Jaden Daniels doesn't need to run for 1,134 yards and shoulder the burden of the entire run game. Their leading rusher among their running backs was Logan Diggs with 652 yards. Dropping off from that, Josh Williams had 233. Jaden Williams was asked to do far too much in the LSU run game. And I think that if they had a bell cow, they're not 9-3. They win 10 or 11 games. They pull an upset or two. They're a better team. They're a better offense. They're more formidable. And you just asked too much of this kid. And I think it caught up to you at large as a program. And it was just, you're not going to beat the best teams in America when you're asking this kid to throw for 360 and, oh, by the way, run it 14 times for 95 yards against Alabama and Florida State. That's a tough way to make a living.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree with you on that. Maybe this was all part of Brian Kelly's master plan because he knew he wasn't going to compete with Alabama and Georgia this year, so might as well get me a Heisman Trophy winner, so I have something to show off to all of our big money donors. Another thank you to our friends at Fortis and Rick Lewis for presenting this episode of ITG for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. Visit fortis.us. So the Heisman is the ultimate award in college football, right, Jed? The ultimate postseason individual award. But there's also a lot of different other awards and honors and things of that nature that go along that are announced at the end of a college football season. And some of our Mountaineers have found themselves honored here in the last week or so. Beanie Bishop, of course, talented defensive back, Football Writers of America, first teamer, Walter Camp, first teamer, College Football Network, first team, Bleacher Report, first team, and AP, second team, All-American. our guy, Zach Frazier, College Football Network, second team, USA Today, second team, The Athletic, second team, Sports Illustrated, second team, AP, third team, and Jaheim, the freshman phenom White, College Football Network's first team freshman All American. So, some other, we had discussed Jed some Big 12 honors and things like that, I believe, on our previous episode. But nice to see a couple of these Mountaineers get some national love, some All American love as well too.
Yeah, start with Beanie. Not bad for a backup corner from Minnesota, right? A kid that bounced from Western Kentucky, made his way up to the Big Ten with the Gophers, and found his way to West Virginia. And what a perfect role that he played on this West Virginia defense throughout the course of 12 games. We've talked about his ability to play the football in flight. We've talked about the impact that he's had from a passes defended standpoint. So, I mean, that's just it. When I think the lesson to be learned here, as we are in portal season, how many people, when we signed Beanie Bishop, were absolutely lighting it up? Well, there you go, problem solved. Lockdown corner right there. I can project that right now and tell you, no problem at all at that corner. No, I mean, a lot of people are complaining. Oh no, I've never heard of him. That means he's not very good. Oh no, I mean, the concerns outweigh, the exclamation points, right? So just be cautious of that and understand that in this crazy wilderness of mirrors that is the portal, uh, you have to trust your scouting and your evals. That's what you have to trust. And we're going to pursue kids that we think fit in every possible metric, fit what we want them to do financially, on the field, between the lines, outside the lines, locker room presence. And Beanie Bishop checks every one of those boxes. He has been a tremendous addition for us. He is one of, in my estimation, I think we'll reflect on Beanie as the poster child for all things that when you get things right in the portal. See, we need another Beanie Bishop. We need to hit on another guy like that. That's what you're looking for. So now the
Absolutely.
standard has been set. Now let's try and hit that standard as many times as possible and get as many Beanie Bishops in that locker room as we possibly can. And then you jump to Zach. You talk about Zach Frazier. I'm still salty. I'm still sore. It's going to take me a while, maybe half the off season, to really relish and enjoy what Zach has won, as opposed to being ticked off about what he hasn't. So I'm just very defensive of Zach Frazier. I truly believe he's the best center in college football. I truly believe he's going to play in the NFL for a long, long time and make somebody very, very happy. Uh, so, as nice as it is to achieve some of these awards and some of these honors that you just talked about, these are some big names that he hit second team, and in the case of the Associated Press, third team. That's great, but I'm always going to feel like Zach deserved more, and it's just going to take me some time to acclimate and
Hey,
adjust to
Jed.
that.
Hey, Jed.
Yeah,
What's the best medicine?
the best medicine.
Revenge, right? Is the best medicine.
Revenge. Yeah, revenge.
I mean, these the Athletic and College Football Network, and they could give him second and third teamer. All right, that's fine. 15 years from now, when he's getting his gold jacket and going into
Yeah,
Canton, all right, then you and I will
yeah,
be laughing, saying who's laughing now.
yeah. Absolutely. And then, Jaheim, when I think back to, I mean, Tomas was a freshman All American. I mean, that speaks on a lot of levels to an incredibly bright future. And he earned that. When you stop and think about it, here we are, not just in portal season, but in the recruiting season. In the early enrollment period, we got National Signing Day coming up on December 20th. We got to do a big production, a big show, just like we always do for the Mountaineer Sports Network at Learfield. Uh, and you think about it, every school in America is doing some version of that, extolling the virtues of their 18 to 25 kids that they signed as being world beaters, as being the best out there, as being the best among us. Now, that's 18 to 25 kids times how many programs? 130,
Mhm.
130 plus FBS programs. Well, it's a very short list of those. When you start doing the math, you get way up into those numbers. It's a very short list of those that actually make freshman first team All American. And to think that Jaheim White, that kid who this time last year I was watching on tape for the first time, this time last year I was talking to his high school coach, this time last year I was learning who he was and what he was about and getting excited the more tape I watched, that 12 months later he would be one of those very select, very few to be a first team freshman All American, much like Tomas was. So great for him. Great for what that says about his future with the Mountaineers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a tip of the cap for all three of these kids. And there's others that we haven't mentioned, but
Sure, sure.
as you touched on from the Big 12, we talked about them previously. But these honors on the national scale, they're tough to come by. It's not like West Virginia is in that blue blood club and they just toss these things out readily with a smile on their face. I mean, you surely have to earn it time, almost a time and a half, if you have the flying WV on your helmet, and to make your way into any of these teams. So uh, credit to Beanie, credit to Zach, and credit to Jaheim. Great job by all.
Absolutely. There's your All-American honors updates. As it's cool to see some Mountaineers get honored at a very high level here as the season has come to a close. With another season coming to a close, as always, not only is it a portal moving and shaking season, but it's coaching carousel moving and shaking season. And Jed, some significant changes, hires, departures around the Big 12 conference. Where you want to start here? Kind of run us through the gambit.
Well, on the defensive side, I found this interesting. Joe Gillespie, who just finished his second year at TCU on Sonny Dykes' staff. Now, remember that this was the superintendent of the defense that helped them achieve all those great things in 2022 that they did on that run to the national championship. Well, now he's out. So TCU is going to be with a new coordinator heading into 2024. I find that terribly interesting. And then on the offensive side, if you look within the league, we talked about the fact, or maybe we didn't. Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas, very highly respected coach, had been on Lance Leipold's staff all the way back from their Buffalo days to their D3 days. Well, he took the job as the new OC at Penn State. So that leaves Kansas in need of an OC. So,
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, Penn State, if you're looking at West Virginia's future opponents next year, it will be a Penn State team with new coordinators on both sides of the ball because Manny Diaz is off to take the Duke job. So, West Virginia on September 1st is going to face a Penn State team with a new OC and a new DC. Now, back to Kansas, Andy Kotelnicki left. Well, Jeff Grimes parted ways. Baylor parted ways with Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator on Dave Aranda's staff at Baylor. And you just had to know that Jeff Grimes wouldn't be on the market for long. He's very highly respected. I think that he was kind of a scapegoat for some of the things that went wrong on a very young football team that got banged up in the wrong spots. And just as you suspect, he wasn't out of work for very long. Lance Leipold taps him as his new OC in Kansas. And now you have Jeff Grimes in Kansas. Well, as the musical chairs go, that left a spot for a new OC at Baylor. Well, a very familiar face lands on Dave Aranda's staff at
Yes.
Baylor.
Spav.
And so a guy that West Virginia has a lot of history with, and that's Jake Spavital. And I've always been a big fan of Jake's. Jake's a quality human being. He's a quality football coach. Um, and I think that's a good pairing with another quality human being, a quality football coach, and Dave Aranda. So I do think those two will work well together. Uh, when you study or understand what Jake does. I mean, he's from the old school 10 personnel, no tight end air raid, kind of like I was back in the day on the run and shoot side. Well, like the more productive coaches, he started to recognize it's easier, or teams have come up with more creative ways to defend these spread air raids because they're so mainstream now. So you've had to incorporate the use of some big body guys like tight ends, fullbacks. Jake's done that and done it well. And he was doing some really creative things with Dana the last time he was here in 2018. He's coached a lot since he left here. He was the head man at Texas State, just didn't work out for him. But I do think that Baylor got themselves a good one as their new OC down there. And then finally, if you want to league play, another future West Virginia opponent, and you talk about a guy that I really feel bad for,
Oh, I know where this is going.
Kerwin Bell's son has been the O coordinator at Western Carolina, been putting up. Kerwin Bell coaches at Western Carolina. For those of you who don't remember from a past life, I mean, I'm dating myself, but Kerwin Bell, the former University of Florida quarterback from the 80s, okay, is now the head coach at Western Carolina. and his son is regarded as really an up and comer on the offensive side of the football. He's done some really productive things for Western Carolina, put up some big numbers there at the FCS level. Well, don't look now, but Pat Narduzzi has hired him as the new OC at Pitt, and I can't imagine how miserable that existence will be for a guy who likes to believe in high octane, aggressive offense, stepping into a building to be bossed around by Pat Narduzzi, who fired Mark Whipple for no good reason,
Yep.
replaced him with a Frank Signetti hire that he thought would be a better fit because it was very conservative, very close to the vest,
Yep.
very boring, and very appealing to the powers that be on the Pitt football staff. But now they have new coordinators, so let's see how this works out. Expect them to at least have the pretense of being more aggressive, but let's see how aggressive Pat Narduzzi allows them to be. Because last time they were aggressive and last time they were explosive, he wasn't a big fan of it. He didn't like winning that way. There's a
Yeah,
certain way he likes to win.
he didn't like winning an ACC title that way.
Yes,
I don't care that we
yes,
won the ACC title and had the best season in 40 years that our programs
yes.
had.
It's like we're supposed to win ugly with defense. Get rid of this guy, so
Yeah,
I can show people
yeah.
we can win ugly with defense. Well, now they're leaning
Run
back
the
into
football and stop the run.
a little more aggressive posture on offense with a new hire. Let's see how deferential he truly is to his new young OC. We'll see how that works out. We'll
Well,
get them
Jed,
early.
if his new young OC has success, he'll fire him and then trash him in the media and to the boosters, just like he did with Matt Canada and just like he did with Mark Whipple, the two best offensive coordinators he ever had at Pitt. And if it doesn't work out well, then maybe your favorite post game presser will have to be moved somewhere else because this this might be a make or break hire for Mr. Narduzzi.
Absolutely.
I can tell you
My
folks
guilty
this.
pleasure.
I could, no doubt. And my guilty pleasure is saying things like this. I know he wasn't Pitt's first choice. I know he wasn't Pitt's second choice. He might have not even been their third choice. Now, that takes nothing away from him. That just makes me laugh a little bit because I know some people didn't want to work with Pat Narduzzi. But I'll also say this, that doesn't always mean disaster. Sometimes in history, that's ended up working really well for places. Jed, when I was in Philadelphia, right? When I first got to Philadelphia, it was at the very end of the Andy Reid era with the Eagles, and they wanted to hire Ben McAdoo. Ben McAdoo, Ben McAdoo, Ben McAdoo, Ben McAdoo, who ended up taking the Giants job, and the Eagles hired Doug Peterson. And everyone in Philadelphia was like, we're doomed. We missed out on our coach. Not only did we miss out on our coach, he's in our division up in New York with the Giants. Oh,
Yep.
man, we're
Yep.
screwed. And 3 years later, Ben McAdoo had run the Giants into the ground, and Doug Peterson was hoisting the Lombardi Trophy with Nick Foles after outdueling Tom
That's
Brady.
right. Yes.
So it's weird how these things can happen. Now, hopefully, this isn't a success story like that for Pitt and for Pat Narduzzi. But obviously, I'm glad you snuck that one in there, as we're always keeping an eye on those guys to the north, and obviously, we'll have them on the schedule as Jed mentioned early again this season. We'll get a look, an early look at that new look Pitt offense up there at Acrisure Stadium. All right, Jed, one more here before we go to break. We'll come back on the other side, close out with some WVU portal updates. But Nico Marchiol, of course, quarterback for the Mountaineers. You shared this with us earlier, and we all thought that this was pretty cool. Nico has posted it on all of his social media. So if you follow Nico or you go search him out on social media, you'll be able to find this on his Twitter page, on his Instagram, all those different things. But basically, trying to raise some money for Cody, who has been battling neuroblastoma. Oh, that's a big word. Neuroblastoma for 18 years, now has leukemia, was recently placed in ICU after having double pneumonia. So Nico has struck up a friendship with Cody, has posted a video of them FaceTiming with each other and things like that. And Nico is now trying to raise money to help Cody in his fight and with his medical bills. Our guy Schuyler will make sure he puts the link to that here in our YouTube description if you want to get involved. But like I said, it's the links are on social media, on all of Nico's different platforms. If you can find him there, we'll put it in the YouTube comments here of this video. But pretty cool, Jed, too. I mean, you and I and Owen, we all talked about earlier in the season what Garrett Green and Zach Frazier were doing at Children's Hospital just hours after that heartbreaking loss in Houston. We've always got time to highlight when athletes, when Mountaineers are out there giving back in the community. And this is certainly another example, a great example.
It's a great example, and it just speaks to the incredibly high character on the team in that room. Garrett Green retweeted this with a shout out. So I'm not surprised that a young man like Nico has taken it upon himself to try and move the needle for a kid in need like Cody. Let's talk about this real quick. Stop and consider the circumstances. Okay, neuroblastoma typically diagnosed at a very young age, right? It's no joke. It's a handful. All hands on deck to fight it, right? Well, this kid has been battling this for a long, long time.
18
And
years.
now
Yeah.
you're talking for 18 years. And now you're talking about, in addition to that, he now has leukemia, an entirely separate cancer. So he's been battling leukemia in addition to the neuroblastoma. And recently, as if things weren't challenging enough for this poor kid, he was placed in intensive care after having double pneumonia. So please, the holidays are upon us. Again, I always like to say I sit down with my wife and we discuss these things and figure out what we can offer. Please do the same. Credit to Nico for putting this on the radar. But even just a couple bucks in circumstances like this, I'm sure that when this kid's support structure leans into this, they'd like to have a couple extra bucks to stay at a hotel along the way, or for some gas to pay for, or a meal on the way, whatever it might be. It's these types of things are so often used in ways that you maybe can't even envision. But whatever you can put yourself in position and find your way to giving in the season of giving, please do. As soon as we finish taping, that's priority one for me to sit down with my wife and we're going to discuss this. But credit to Nico Marchiol is an exceptional young man, and whatever you can do to help this poor kid out. He's obviously a fighter. He's obviously a battler. I mean, he's been dealt the shorthand in life, and he just keeps coming back and punching and swinging and punching and swinging. So please do what you can do to help this young man out.
Yep. Well said. Jed, I know I'm guilty of that at times. Sometimes you see things like this and you think, man, what am I going to do? I wish I could donate a couple $1,000s, but I can't donate a couple $1,000s. You know what? How can I really help? I'm telling you, it's the most cliched thing, but it is because it's true. Every little bit helps. You get 20 people who each give $20, and that might not seem like much, but it might not seem like you're doing much, but all of a sudden there's $400. Like you said, that's a couple nights at a hotel to ease a travel burden, things like that, food, gas, whatever it may be. So yeah, it is the season of giving. It is Christmas, and we love to see our Mountaineers out there spreading goodwill and using their platforms for good. And like I said, we'll have that link in the description of this YouTube video. You can find it on all of Nico's social media channels as well too. And big shout out to Mr. Marchiol for doing good and giving back and using his platform to benefit others here. Like I said, we've always got time to highlight that here on In the Gun. All right, we got to get to a break. When we come back on the other side, we will close down. We'll take a look specifically at WVU in the portal to this point. Who's in the portal? Who have the Mountaineers reached out to? What do we know here a couple weeks into this wintertime portal window being ongoing? We'll discuss that when we come back on the other side to close down this episode of ITG. You are In the Gun.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
For more West Virginia Mountaineer football content, be sure to follow us on Twitter at In the Gun Podcast.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
If you work the land, you just got to be a jack of all trades type. There's just too much to do. So if you got to be a welder or a farmer or a ditch digger, that's just who you are that day. Then tomorrow, you can be somebody else.
Get your Coyote at the new location of Johnston Equipment between Weston and Buchanan.
Back in the gun here, and you will notice we have added a line mate here to our final segment on this edition of ITG. Our producer / co-host / everything extraordinaire. He's here. He's there. He's everywhere. Schuyler Callahan, of course. You guys know him from In the Gun, Fan Nation, SI Now, covers the Carolina Panthers, the Charlotte Hornets, the WVU Mountaineers. We were giving him some grief when he hopped on here. You could say he's wearing his UNC colors, but you know what? We're still 2 weeks out from the game. There's enough buffer. We'll let this one slide, Schuyler.
Yeah, it's interesting because when the game was first announced, like we were watching it kind of unfold, and we've been hearing like there might be Notre Dame, might be Louisville, Virginia Tech, Carolina still hadn't been picked because the ACC was taking forever. And my wife was just like praying, like, please let it be Carolina, because she's a Carolina fan, but she's a WVU graduate. So we're just kind of like, man, it'd be really cool if we had this matchup in our own backyard. And lo and behold, now I'm going to the game with her in the stands instead of working in the press box. So it'll be kind of cool. But yeah.
Well, listen, hold on, wait. If you're not going to be in the press box, how am I going to get someone to steal me one of those Duke's Mayo West
I still
Virginia
got
jars?
you. I still got you.
Okay,
I got somebody that's going to be there working it for us, and he said I don't need it. So
listen, I'll pay shipping and handling. All right, I just need one.
I should charge you. You know,
you can charge.
Venmo, what are you guys wearing?
Put the Venmo request.
That's the question, Scott. What are you guys going to wear? What are you wearing?
I know what Schuyler's wearing. All right.
Yeah, I mean, she's already been trying. Like the moment it came out, she was looking for these half Carolina, half WV shirts. I'm like, you're never going to find that. But I think she's going to go with a West Virginia beanie shirt and then a Carolina jacket or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. I might have to dress somewhat professional, but we'll see.
Yeah. You'll leave the eat shit pit shirt at home.
Yeah.
All right, a little professional.
Yeah.
All right, well,
track you down and get a picture.
Speaking of which, Mr. Professional, I mean, I feel like honestly for these last 15, 20 minutes or however long this is going to be here, I should just get out of the way because this is your guys' realm. I mean, Schuyler has the transfer portal tracker on si.com. Or give me the exact direct Mountaineers. Is it mountaineersnow.com, right?
Yeah, you can go to mountaineersnow.com, and that's
mountaineersnow.com. Yep. I know you have the transfer portal tracker. So I'll open this up to you two. Where do you guys want to start? Additions, departures, offers, visits, where are we at? What's kind of the place to begin here?
I'd hit the additions.
Yeah. Let's hit the additions first. Well, there hasn't been any yet. So
yeah, that's right.
The brakes, right? Pump the brakes.
Exactly.
Patience, young one.
Yeah, and I know a lot of fans
young Padawan
on Twitter are getting a little antsy, but I promise there is good news coming. I'm not gonna reveal that or anything, but you got a couple decision dates already set. One's coming this week, Friday. It's Duquesne transfer Aiden Garnes. Very familiar with him, obviously playing West Virginia earlier in the year. George Kilgore from Tennessee Tech just released his top 3, FAU, West Virginia, South Carolina. And Devin Cromwell, kid from Guelph, which was funny because when I first typed it out, I was just like, all right, that just sounds like a D2 school, right? So I'm just going to put D2. And then I published it, and I'm like, wait a second. I want to double check this, make sure it's not like NAIA. Lo and behold, it's in Canada. So I'm like, All right, this is a first for me. So they are a part of some league, college league up there in Canada, but he's heavily considering West Virginia and should expect a decision on him soon. So those are kind of a few names to watch out for. Michael Murata, who's a transfer from Valdosta State, a center. He's going to be in town this weekend. There's a host of these kids coming in. So if you keep track of that tracker, you'll pretty much have everything you need there. Offers, visits, guys leaving the portal or leaving West Virginia to go to the portal, guys coming in. We'll keep it all in one spot for you.
And it's an ongoing process. And what I mean by that, yes, this is a critical juncture these next handful of weeks because kids have an opportunity to jump into the portal right now. But you're going to have other windows between now and next fall, including the May window. That's going to be a critical, window too. So if you itemize this, and let's try and sort through this and make sense out of it for folks, as to people sitting at home listening or watching might be thinking, well, I can't imagine, why doesn't, why don't you jump right in right now and grab all these kids? Well, this is typically how this works, right, Wes?
Mm-hmm.
There's the top tier of kids, and everybody in the free world is going to want this top tier of kids. Well, everybody doesn't have the resources or the pedigree to land these top kids.
Correct.
Now, the next group of kids, you might be thinking, okay, you're not going to get, let's just attach some arbitrary numbers to this. You're not going to get 1 through 5, for instance. I'm not, these aren't foolproof numbers. I'm just, for posterity's sake, to explain this. Sure. 1 through 5, let's say, are going blue blood. They're going big package, big NIL package, blue blood, whatever it might be. Okay, so now let's look at 6 through 15. Well, 6 through 15 is going to be a combination of some blue bloods that want a bit of a discount, and the rest of the kids that are packed in with the rest of the kids, the rest of the schools that are packed in the same stratosphere as West Virginia. Let's say that's 30, 40 non-blue blood schools. So you're still competing with the market being driven up by all those potential suitors for
Sure.
6 to 15, for instance. So really the trick to this, as a school with a budget, you have to be disciplined with your budget, disciplined with your resources. You can't overspend. But the true trick is to find that kid sitting at number 17 who is kind of off the radar of the other 30 schools that are in the same stratosphere as you. And they're kind of looking at it like, what do you see in that kid? We don't quite see that. But your scouting is telling you that he's ready to take the next step these other schools aren't comfortable with, because now you're going to get that kid for cheap. In other words, like a backup cornerback at a Big Ten school that's not a starter.
Yeah.
Who's that
Beanie
sound
Bishop.
like? Beanie Bishop. That's exactly how you ended up landing Beanie Bishop. In other words, you trusted your evaluation, you trusted your scouting, you studied all the tape that he had available when he played enough to put some tape out there. But you're saying, look, we feel about this kid, he's ready to take that next step that maybe some other teams aren't. I'll give you another name. A couple of years ago, West Virginia was in on Josh Newton from Louisiana Monroe. Well, he ended up going to TCU and being a first team All Big 12 performer. Well, most teams in the Big 12 didn't think Josh Newton was ready to take that leap. West Virginia and TCU did. So we found ourselves in a bit of a bidding war with TCU. They outbid us. They won in the 11th hour. We almost got Josh Newton in the same way. That's what it's going to take. In other words, everybody can look at it and say, well, obviously, 1 through 5, we know those are great players and we'd love to have them, but we can't get them. We either can't afford them, or there's packages that they find more inviting elsewhere. We're not going to get them. So then when you look at kids clumped together 6 through 15, well, we might have a shot at them, but it's going to take a huge part of your budget because you're competing with 30 or 40 other schools that have as much money or more than you do. Does this make sense what I'm saying? So
100%. Jed,
none of this.
Jed, it's like when Shohei Ohtani's out there, right? He ain't going to the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Milwaukee Brewers, brother, right? He's because they ain't got the budget.
Exactly. So what you have to do is you need to find somebody who is competitive and skilled enough to help you win games that maybe you see and nobody else quite does yet. That's the true trick. There's a reason that we have a guy in Drew Fabianich as the new general manager, the first general manager in the history of West Virginia football, who spent a career in the NFL with Bill Parcells in the scouting realm. That's what you need in that room. That's what you need making those evaluations. You need to find those kids who aren't necessarily top tier, who aren't even not necessarily the tier after top tier, tier 2, tier 3. You need to find the ones who are almost quite that, and you see something that they're ready to take a step, and you can afford them with the money you have, and you can get them in here and they can help your program. And that's not something that a week into the portal, well, there you go. We signed all our guys. We're ready to go. We've had 7 days. That's not how this works. There's
No,
no rush.
And Jed, in fact, a lot of times there's benefits to being patient, right? Schuyler, you talked about this before we started recording. I thought this was a great analogy by you. It's like this NFL free agency opens in March, right? And the big names come off the board right away and they get the big contracts and all those things. But then after the first couple days, the market cools off a little bit, and there's that second wave of NFL free agency. Okay, maybe some of these guys didn't get the money that they thought they were going to demand, and I think the smart teams in the NFL are the ones that swoop in that second wave of free agency. And so maybe they're not getting the A+ easy, nailed on, plug and play player, but they're getting an A- B+ guy at a big discount. Like that's it is. You're working with a budget. You're not the LA Dodgers. You're not the New York Yankees. You're a mid-market team who's got to be smart with your money.
But the one thing I think is really cool, though, I mentioned this on one of our shows earlier last week. For the first time ever, fans can actually have a part in making this team. Now they're not going to be able to handpick the guys that they go and get, but you have a chance to say, you know what? Why can't West Virginia spend the same type of money as a Florida State? Maybe not an Alabama or Michigan, but Florida State. Why not be able to have that type of pockets? You can do that. But the trust is something that has to be built up. And they've made remarkable progress here over the last couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. But for as much passion and as much love as there is for this for this school in this state, it needs to be a heck of a lot bigger than it is right now. And I think it will be. And they've done a really good job marketing all that. The second thing I want to say is I think with the portal, what's going to get lost in all this is I think JUCO is going to get wiped out like very, very quickly. Because why would you take a JUCO kid when he's already got technically that one transfer, unless these transfer rules change? When he goes again, he's stuck there. So for him, why would you go to a JUCO in the first place, unless there's an academic reason or whatever? If you're a Power 5 or G5 school, you have a chance to pluck kids from these other programs that have played at a higher level. So I feel for them. I feel for D2, D3, all those types of people. I talked to Fairmont State's head coach Jason Woodman over the summer, and he's like, "Man, we can't even get into high school recruiting until like December because all the portal kids come in, or all the other big schools, they come into our backyard and they try to take our kids away, and then we have to see what's left." And then we can't even really recruit the portal until it's chosen over because everyone's trying to move up instead of down. So I really feel for those types of schools, especially JUCO, because I just don't know how much longer that's going to last.
Equivalent. Here's what happens in high school recruiting, and you're starting to see some of it happen in the portal space as well. And you're right about the JC side of things, Schuyler. Especially when you have football staffs. Neil Brown's talked about this. There's two types of portal targets. Yeah. There's the immediate impact target, and then there's the developmental target. In other words, when you look at Tomey, when Tomey came from Kentucky, we almost got Tomey out of high school, but we lost out on Tomey to Kentucky. In some regards, we're better off because we land Tomey in a more secure situation because he's not able to leave now till he graduates.
Yep.
But when you look at what happens at the high school level, sometimes what happens, you might think that you're in a good spot with a kid, and for the better part of a year and a half, you'd forge this relationship with him, his staff, his family, and the next thing you know, he's verbal to you, and he's been a long time verbal, 6, 8, 10, 12 months. Well, wouldn't you know it, 3-4 weeks before NSD, here he comes and he bails out and he's going to Ohio State. What ends up happening is something fell through for Ohio State, and they now found, hey, we thought we had, this extra receiver, but now we lost this extra receiver. So go pluck that guy from West Virginia and tell him we want him now. That's what happens.
Yep.
They lose the kid to whoever else, and they're like, all right, well, we didn't offer this West Virginia kid, but now really aggressively go after this West Virginia kid, tell him Ohio State's in love with him and we desperately want him. So you always lose kids like that, or you often lose kids like that. Well, now let's see how that translates on the portal front. Okay. You might have some kids who have situations with their handlers communicating with the schools. And maybe they think as a middle tier kid or a second tier kid, again, if you want to go tier one, tier two, tier three, let's say he's tier two. Well, they thought that they had a deal in place with Ole Miss. And next thing you know, they don't. It fell through. So now they're left scrambling because they thought they were going to be a hot commodity with a secure place to land right a week into the portal. And now they don't. And now their head's on a swivel. Oh no, what do we do now? Well, if you're West Virginia, it serves you well to wait on those things to happen. It doesn't serve you well to rush into something and make these commitments that otherwise, by and large, are going to be there. It's not like you're flashing money at a kid so large. Hey, we better flash it first and land them now because we're going to outspend everybody. No, you're not. No, you're not. When they're coming here, they're not coming here because you're out flashing everybody else's money. I mean, it's going to be a comparable package if, in fact, you think they bring the relative value to your roster. But you have those things happen at the high school level, and they have for many years, where somebody lands a spot with Alabama or Georgia or Notre Dame, whoever it might be, that things change in the 11th hour at these massive schools with these massive resources. And now they end up offering this kid that they didn't think they were going to offer. Well, that's how the West Virginias of the world lose out in the 11th hour on some of these kids. Well, now you're going to start seeing some of that same type of thing happen in the portal, and you already have. So, what's the mad rush? It really doesn't stand to benefit you on many levels if you are going to hurry into this. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. And there was one point that Matt Rule actually made today on the Pat McAfee show that really I didn't think about is there's no binding contracts to this thing, right? So whatever collective and the kid that, whatever deal or package they come up with, either side can break that. So you can sit there and say, yeah, we'll get you $1 million if you come here. But then the kid might go there and the money may not ever come. And if he's already transferred from one school, he's stuck there, like we just said. So that's the really bad thing about it. That's why I feel like these kids really have to be smart about where they're going, when they're transferring, if they need to transfer. And then also you got to be careful about the money thing too, because, and I think the biggest kind of disconnect that fans don't realize, the school cannot do anything with the money. The coaching staff, they can't even have conversations about money with the kid. That's only directed through whatever collective that school has. So there's no tie at all. Neil Brown's not going and saying, hey, we're about to get this kid from the portal. Can you get about, $800,000 ready for me? Like, he can't do that.
No, he can't. And the people that work in this business every day, and I got friends in the industry across the country, but the general rule of thumb that almost invariably they'll tell you to apply to this, whatever number you see publicly, as a very general rule, at least cut it in half.
Yep.
At least cut it in half. Whatever figure you see floated, agents have inflated that figure, and rest assured that most of the time you can at least cut that number in half.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a dog, but he ain't getting $20 million to stay at Ohio State for another year. Ain't happening.
Walk me through on any level how that would be sustainable.
Please. It's not.
You wouldn't even get the return, even if you won a national championship. Like, how much are you getting back in revenue from that? Like,
the only way to me that type of investment makes sense is if you're getting like a Tim Tebow for 4 years type quarterback.
Right. Not a
you know what
I
mean? Who's going to elevate your program for 4 years and bring you multiple national championships and win a Heisman? Okay, maybe that's worth $20 million, but yeah, cool. It's a wild time, gentlemen. It is for sure. 400 people, over 400 people have joined the Country Roads Trust in the month of December. That's fantastic. I'm one of them, baby. Yeah, I'm waiting to get my decal and my hat and everything in the mail, and then I'll display it here in the background somewhere. But like Schuyler said, if you're a nut like me, all right, and you want to influence this, It's that same conversation we had earlier when we were talking about the money that Nico's raising. Every little bit helps. You ain't got to give 20 grand a year to the trust. Heck, you don't even have to give $2,000 a year to the trust. A couple $100 a year, couple dollars a month, couple Starbucks lattes, couple 12 packs of Busch Light a month, and you could be the difference in WVU getting a player
And
that they want to have the budget for.
And what I've been telling people too is like, listen, you can't be one of these schmucks on Twitter that just run your mouth about, oh,
Correct.
they're going after all these FCS guys. Why can't we, get
Correct.
this guy or whatever? If you're going to have those type of opinions, you better be donating your money either to the trust or the MAC or something, because it's kind of like voting, right? Like if you can't complain about it if you don't put your say in.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. It's like
Just
voting,
to your point,
right?
Schuyler, every year, FCS Division II on the line, players at those levels go to the NFL.
Oh,
now
yeah.
what's happened is Power 5 schools are trying to see the same things those NFL teams say and say, hey, I'm not going to wait on that kid to get drafted. I'm going to bring him in right now because Alabama's getting all these other kids. I want to get the kids Alabama doesn't want. So why don't I get this kid for 1 year? He was going to the NFL anyway from Western Kentucky or even an FCS program, but I'm going to get him here instead on his way to the NFL. That's what these non-blue blood Power 5s are now trying to do. And guys, we've asked a million times, what does the new path to winning look like for West Virginia in college football 2.0? Please stop telling me about how we won with college football 1.0. I get it. It was great. We took undervalued assets, 2 and 3 star kids who were pissed off that they weren't valued higher. They came in with a chip on their shoulder. We kept them for 4 and 5 years together as a team, as a program. We overdeveloped them in our strength and conditioning, and we churned out more talent to the NFL than anybody had any business doing. That is over. Okay. Major Harris would have been a great player for Ohio State. That's most likely the reality that we would have been living in. Okay.
Steve Slayton.
So
Steve Slayton would have been a great Georgia Bulldog, man. I
Avon
tell you.
Austin.
Yeah, imagine what Steve Slayton would have demanded on the open market after breaking Tony Dorsett's rushing record as a true freshman in the Sugar Bowl. So yeah, the new reality is you can't do to the extent we used to do it. You can't keep your whole team intact for 4 and 5 years and do that. The best you can hope for is everybody in the country is going to have roster turnover now somewhere at 30, 40, or even 50% in some cases. So what can you do? First of all, continue to develop at least half your team. It's not going to be the whole team that it used to be that we won all those games with, but continue to develop at least half your team. And that's where your culture comes from. But the new path to winning is out scouting everyone else when it comes to the portal and your evaluations, even down to the high school level. So if you can out scout teams that have more resources, more money, and more assets than you, and get kids that they don't want, but you do, and plug them in to the 50, 60%, 70% of your roster, whatever it might be, that you're able to keep each year, that is how you win. And then you get on to the more difficult part, and that's how do you sustain that?
And
First, how do you win? Second, how do you sustain it? Because every year you now have to reinvent your football team. And that wasn't the case before. It's the case now. This is college football 2.0. I get tired of saying it.
Year too.
What's that?
Said you got to re-recruit your own football team every year too.
That's what I was going to say. The piece of this that's missing, because we're talking about the portal, and we're talking about those that have entered the portal, and we're talking about the names that we're hoping to get through the portal. But what we haven't even mentioned are the kids that we've retained, which are hands down the biggest wins.
And I think
I don't care who you land in the portal. Okay,
I think it's hilarious. Like
Garrett.
I was just gonna say, I think it's hilarious. You see a couple days ago, breaking Jaheim White, and I'm like, son of a, you gotta be kidding me. Says that he's staying at WVU,
weird.
and I'm like,
yeah,
this is what we're living in now, where I have a heart attack because I read the first 4 words of a tweet and I think, oh God, he's leaving, and no, he's committed to stay for another year.
Let's right now, nobody we're going to get in the portal. Nobody is going to excite you more than keeping Wyatt Milan, keeping Tomas Remack, keeping Jaheim White, keeping Garrett Green, keeping Traylon Ray, keeping Rodney Gallagher. That is so incredibly massive.
Yep.
That's a problem that so many teams in the Big 12 and beyond are dealing with right now. losing these critical pieces of what they're doing to the portal. We're all going to lose pieces, but it's remarkable what we've been able to retain to this point. So that's part of this conversation too.
Take care of your own first before you
Take
start
care of your
moving
own.
around.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying, Jed, too, is like the scouting thing. Drew Fabianich is a huge pickup for this program, and not a lot of teams around the country have GMs. So you have an advantage in some respects because he's done this for years. He's projected kids in when he was in the NFL what they were going to do from when they came out of college. It's the same thing, just a little earlier in the process. So I think that's an advantage for West Virginia.
And Jed,
And the
to your
names that we've
point,
seen surface, right? I'm not so sure that there are a lot of surprises in the building. I
No.
can't say there's none. Okay. But as somebody who knows the people in the building, I can't say there are a lot of major surprises. This thing changes on a dime every day, right? But it's not as though they feel completely ambushed by some of the things that have unfolded on
Much
any level.
respected,
And
yeah.
maybe in the past, just like here and everywhere else, we were kind of ambushed. We didn't have the trust in order quite the way that we do now. You didn't know how to anticipate these things quite the way we do now. In other words, there's no
Akeem Messador.
I remember how surprising and shocking Akeem was. None of us saw that coming with Akeem.
Yeah.
None of us in the building saw that coming with Akeem, right? And that hasn't played out again probably since then. I mean, you've had mild surprises, but discussions, and they're reasonable when you understand the why behind what the kid's saying. But so yeah, we've at least started to acclimate to it. And to Schuyler's point, the trust is far from a finished product. It never will be, to be honest with you. But where it is now compared to where it was 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, or even a year ago, or even a week ago, based on the progress that we've made in the last couple of days, they forged some inroads. They really have, and it's I hate to use the word stabilized, but compared to what it was a couple of years ago, it has stabilized. At least the infrastructure of what's behind it is in a better place.
I completely agree with you. And I think that Akeem Messador example was a perfect one of, knock on wood. But I think we've stabilized beyond that point of those type of shocking portal departures. Country Roads Trust, certainly a huge part of that. Schuyler mentioned a bunch in those names, Jed as well, too, of guys who have already committed that will be back and with the Country Roads Trust. So you know where to go to get involved. You know where to go to find Schuyler for all of your latest portal updates. And you guys are right. I mean, listen, a guy like Drew, that's how you stay ahead of the curve when you're WVU. You don't have Texas A&M money. You ain't got Ohio State money, right? But you can be so you got to be Billy Bean and Moneyball. You got to adapt. You got to adapt or die. You got to grab Jonah Hill and you got to adapt or die. Get with it or get lost. And it seems like we are doing the best we can to get with it and stay on the front foot with this thing. And I think that's got to be encouraging now. And as Jed kind of mentioned, when we look at where we've been over the past couple of years, how that thing is stabilized, that feels huge to me. A final thank you to Johnston Equipment, new friends of the show here. Make sure you're checking out their new location outside of Weston on Route 33. Gentlemen, this was a fun one. This was some portal stuff, some coaching stuff, some headlines, some around campus. We touched on a whole bunch of different things here. We will have later in this week our WVU season review. We've had some time to digest the season now. We'll talk the highs, we'll talk the lows, we'll hand out some awards, all those different things. We'll do that later in the week, so make sure you're checking that out. A reminder, in the description here in the comments as well too, if you want to get involved with Nico Marchiol and the money that he is trying to raise as well, that'll be in the description. Thanks to our guy Schuyler for hopping in here for the back half of the episode. Schuyler will join us. We'll have the full roundtable, all four jabronis, when we do our WVU season review here in just a few days. So that will be a lot of fun. The last thing before we get out of here, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. For Big Owen Schmidt, for Schuyler Callahan, for the signal caller Jed Drenning, I'm Wesley Euler. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.